Good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode number 4 of the Coach's Corner, where today we talk about the newly reversed CARS rule, the NADA show, and much, much more. I want to welcome my co-host here, Mr. Paul Brown. Yeah, you like that? I got a soundboard here. I figure I got to get use of it at some point in time.
I feel like I'm in the NBA.
That is the intro here. So first of all, I apologize in advance if anybody hears whistling coming from my audio, because there's like a full-blown blizzard happening outside of my window, and it is so loud. I woke up, I was just telling Paul, I woke up, it was like 32 degrees, snow everywhere. Then it got up to like 40, all the snow melted, and now I'm getting snow squall warnings with like 50-mile-an-hour winds. And I am dealing with that. So if you hear anything, I apologize. It may not be my usual audio quality.
That's like summertime for you guys up there, though.
Dude, it's the beautiful Northeast weather that you get is amazing. It was like -4 degrees last week. I was up in Buffalo with one of our partners, Reggie from Wise, and he wanted to see Lake Erie while we were up there, and I took him over to Lake Erie, and we went out on the water for him to see it, and we were the only people there because nobody else was dumb enough to be there other than the two of us. And with my bald head, I had no hat, and went out there, and I stood out there for like a solid 2 minutes maybe, and my head physically hurt. But then I was like, I have to come in.
Just got a stray cat and just put it on top.
Yeah, I was like, Reggie, I know you want to come here and do this, but I am going to meet you in the car today. After this, I'm going to go. So first of all, I'm happy to say that I have no cough anymore after like an entire month. I was listening to I'm going through and making some shorts on our videos and listening to myself try and talk through not coughing. Oh my God, it was difficult to hear yourself while you're trying to say things, and then you can watch yourself. You're like, you're about to cough there, and you're just swallowing it so that you don't make noise during it. So luckily enough, I got rid of whatever like death sickness has been with me for like a month, and I'm feeling better. So luckily we won't have that today. So today we are going to start with our news information of the week, which is the NADA celebrates the CARS rule victory as it was overturned. That's the title of an automotive news article. We're going to talk a little bit about that. What does that mean and what's next? So first of all, for those of you that are not familiar with the CARS rule, it was actually kind of an important one, to be honest. It was going to put a lot of regulatory pressure on dealerships out there, and it's important that this got overturned. Okay. So let's talk about what the CARS rule was. The CARS rule was meant to crack down on dealerships' behavior, including bait and switch advertising and sneaking F&I products into deals without customer knowledge, among other things, right? And this isn't to say that these are okay things to do by any means. We're not condoning doing stuff on that level, but it is something that is important that we don't get undue regulatory steps on us. So what's your thoughts on that, Paul?
I think it's here you can tell what their agenda was just simply by the fact of what the CARS rule stood for: combating auto retail scams. So when they come up with something like that's just automatically has retail, automotive, and scams in it together, just tells you what their thought process is. And here, we all want people to do business the right way. We all want dealerships to treat customers the right way, and we're doing our very best to change the kind of the idea of people and the stigma that people have about the automotive industry. And I think the majority of the dealers are doing a really good job of that. The problem with things like this and this type of legislation is the same problem there is with any other legislation. It's brought out as one thing. It says we're going to do this one thing to protect consumers, and we all want somebody to protect consumers. We want to protect consumers. But then they slide all this additional stuff in with it. And then now all of a sudden these are the focal points, but these are the things that they're really going after down here. And it's this, they talk about bait and switch. They're doing bait and switch when they do these rules and these regulations. And it's, I think that all dealers, if you take some portions of that CARS rule, they would all go, yeah, let's put something like that in place, right? Because the people that are doing it the wrong way shouldn't be doing it that way. And if they are, they should be punished. But we also can't make it impossible to have a business or an industry where we're trying, it's a business. We're trying to make money, and profit's not a dirty word. There's it's amazing that they come after the auto industry, but like you go look at like profit margins and stuff like that, and like jewelry stores and furniture stores and things like that. And if you own a jewelry or furniture store and you're listening to this, I'm not mad at you. I'm just saying there's industries that have much higher margins, and a lot less transparency and disclosure. But like the automotive industry is the one that they just keep going after and going after and going after. And mostly because auto dealers have big pockets at some level. And if you go after them, you're going to get big money via big fines. And we see that time and time again. So, yes, let's have rules and regulations that make people be compliant, make people treat people the right way. But let's also make sure that it's fair to everybody. Because what you end up doing when you get too tightly regulated like that, you force dealers to do. So, people that are kind of on the fence are going, okay, well, how do we make this a profitable business? And you force them to think about things that, I think too much regulation causes people to actually be a little bit less compliant. And I think that if people have the right idea and the right mindset and that right servant leading attitude that we preach about all the time, that their dealerships are just organically going to do things the right way. And, let's go after the ones that are giving us a bad name. I'm okay with that. Right. If you're doing sketchy things and you get a $5 million or a $10 million fine, shame on you for doing sketchy things. But if you're a dealer that's just trying to make your way, let them make their way.
No, you're dead on. The thought process of what they're doing, like you said, is not bad. Okay. It's the stores that do those type of tactics are not a positive thing for our industry, right?
Right.
But the problem is it's you're taking it out on all of the other stores that don't. And I think it's a small portion that do the type of things that they're talking about.
Sure.
Right. So I don't ever like any type of legislation that's based on that, right? That is like you're really affecting a small amount, and that amount it becomes less and less as we go forward, right?
Yeah.
You don't have that. So if you're a dealership or you're a dealer group and you're doing that type of stuff, number one, this doesn't make you safe from that, right? You can still get to come after by your state's AG and things like that of that nature. It's just that this doesn't put as much from the FTC on it. And what it really had done is added a whole bunch of complexity and a whole bunch of cost to your compliance solutions, right? And that would be the big thing from last year that all these stores saw was a huge increase in expenses last year, right? And that's what this really would have done is this would have added a layer of expenses that wasn't necessary. And that's the thing I don't like is government overstep that really throws more expenses on both the consumer or ourselves at that point in time or the dealership. And in this case, it would put it on the consumer because they're going to pass that along, right?
Right.
So a lot of times they think that the things that they're doing are positive. And, in theory, saying to get people to stop doing that is a positive thing, right? But you might not get the intended outcome because, like you said, people will try and find their way around it. And then you're going to be also pushing costs upon the consumers because they're going to have to eat the cost of what it's costing these dealers. And that's kind of the point behind these, right? Was to make things more affordable because they thought people were getting charged things they shouldn't have. Well, you're going to artificially increase the cost of these deals, the cost of these vehicles because they're going to have to increase their profits in order to make sure that they're covering that added expense. So that was under the old FTC with Lena Khan that was really, really aggressive. We've obviously got a new FTC chairman coming in, so we'll have to see how that goes. But that also doesn't mean that this is dead. This rule does not necessarily have to die at this point in time. They have some steps to go beyond because it was really only a procedural thing that it actually got them to get this one kicked, right?
Right.
It wasn't like they said that this rule doesn't make sense. Okay. What they said is the FTC's own rule is that they have to go to the consumers and let them know what they're thinking about regulating and give them time to talk about it and before they go and try and introduce regulation, which they did not do with this, right? So they can definitely appeal this all the way up to the Supreme Court. But like I said, now that you have a new incoming chairman of the FTC, I doubt that you have that. Maybe you see an adjusted rule of some sort, but there was even Republicans on that committee that voted for that when they did it. So, I mean, it's not to say that it can't be, so one thing is a dealership or a dealer group, you always want to be just paying attention to what the regulatory landscape is out there and what's going to be possibly changing as things go forward. So that's what I wanted to go on with that one today. You got anything else you wanted to add on that?
No, I think that what you said is exactly true. We need to pay attention. We need to make sure that we're doing things compliant. And as an industry, if we pay more attention to day to day compliance, and we make it a focus, and we're transparent that we're trying to be compliant with our consumers, it just builds trust. It fosters trust. When people trust us, they'll actually allow us to make the kind of money that we need to make, and that we should make, right? But we have to do it. We have to clean our own house first, right? Get our own house in order. And then if like some of these rules come out, like for a lot of dealerships, this cars rule wouldn't have been so, they wouldn't have been like, oh my gosh, we have to change all these things in order to get, but it would have had huge implications because a lot of it also was very there was a lot of ambiguity in it. When you looked at it, there was a lot of things that they're
Right.
like,
Yeah.
this could be a blanket coverage for all of these things, and I don't like stuff that's like that, because then they can just come in. I mean, if you look at anything, it doesn't matter what your business is, it doesn't matter how clean you are, it doesn't matter how great you are, somebody can walk in if they want to go through things with a fine-tooth comb and find problems, right? We're just humans, they exist.
Well, that's the problem with these large regulatory bodies that aren't specific to any industry. They're going after things that are similar to this with, airfare and junk fees with that and stuff like that. And so you don't have any internal knowledge of how a deal is done or any of that. It's just they're looking at things from such a large scope
Right.
that, yeah, in general, it sounds great, but how do you enforce that? Right?
Right.
Like you don't have people that are familiar with it that are crafting these laws. So it's a difficult situation.
Yeah, very much so.
So the next thing I want to go over is obviously last week was the NADA show, which caused a lot of headlines, not because of the show itself. Okay. Mr. Paul Brown here was down there. So I wanted to kind of talk with him a little bit about, hey, what happened? I saw you guys had a little bit of a story on how you guys got there because it looked like 30 to 40% less people ended up showing up than what had signed up for it. So what was your guys' travel like and how did you guys end up getting there?
Yeah, they're saying it was like at 55. The new data is saying it was at about 55% capacity from people that registered.
Okay.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, we were here. We're supposed to fly out Thursday and Wednesday morning about 10. We all get text that our flight was canceled, and we're trying to get down there Thursday, fly back Sunday night was the original plans. And the airlines, being super concerned about our plans, said, we're going to cancel your flight for Thursday morning, but we'll rebook you for Saturday afternoon. We're like, we're coming back Sunday, so that doesn't work.
Right.
So I got on the horn real quick because I travel so much, and I have status with National. They have to guarantee you a car. So I called them, was able to wrangle a minivan out of them, and 6 of us piled into this minivan with our luggage, and we drove 8 hours down to Jackson, Mississippi. And it seemed like that's where a lot of people were flying into, because it was kind of the closest major airport that you could actually get to.
Yeah,
And
everybody
then
was
people were
closing up.
trying to rent cars from there. So, we got down there. We drove to Jackson, stayed overnight, got up the next morning, drove. And when we got about 20 miles out is when we started like seeing the first snow, right? I mean, up to that point, we didn't even see snow. We're like, this could just be a big joke on everybody. And then once we got within about 8 miles, there was quite a bit of snow for them, right? I mean, this was like 100-year record snow for New Orleans. And we get down there and we're like, wow, this is just kind of like what the Midwest is. I mean, this is like this is child's play for what you guys get. So we get down there, and and they don't have the streets clean because they just simply don't have the infrastructure for it. And the biggest problem that they had was, the little bit of, get up to 34, 35 during the day, then drop back down to 17, stuff was melting and refreezing and just creating these sheets of ice that were several inches thick. And so when we were going, we got close, and the navigation was telling us, we're 14 minutes away from our hotel going the way that we're going, but it's trying to reroute us this other way, which is about this similar mileage, but it was like hour and a half because we would have to like go through the city and everybody. So as we're going the regular way, we're looking, in the highway, which goes up onto this big bridge, is closed. But the barricades were just far enough apart where I'm like, I think we could squeeze that. So we get up there and go, and we're in this Chrysler Pacifica minivan, and we're driving, and it is basically all packed snow and ice, but it's not super terrible. Again, not something that we're unused to in the Midwest. And as we're going on the highway, we literally are the only car going our direction, the only car coming the other direction. And when we get close down to where we're getting ready to exit this bridge, there's actually a police car in the other lanes that has those blocked off. I'm assuming there might have been one on our side. He was just on break or off shift or whatever. And as we go by, he's literally videotaping us with his phone. He's probably like, watch, these people are going to get killed. I'm just like, yeah, this is not a big deal. This is just a little bit of snow. So we got there safe and sound and went into the show. And yeah, the show was light. I mean, if you go to NADA as many times as we have, I mean, there's sometimes when it's crazy busy, but it's always pretty busy. And you get on the floor and it was like there was nobody there except for just armies of vendors. And I don't know if they expected this to be a big show, but like each vendor had 8-10 people in there. They were kind of all dressed alike this year. And so it was different. It was a different kind of experience. We got to, get there. Adam gave his talk on the floor, which was really good, very well received. The bunch of people came to watch his basically 20-minute style TED talk. So that was great. And we got to also promote his book, with the book signing and stuff like that. So it worked out well for us. I would say probably the one advantage of the show being so small is all the conversations that you had, because it wasn't so busy and people were trying to jump from one person to the next and just get this shotgun approach. You were able to have much more intimate and intentional conversations. So, the people that we connected with, we really got to connect with. So it was good. All in all, it was good. And I had to fly back Sunday morning because my girls, I have twin girls, that was their 22nd birthday Sunday. So I want to make sure I was back for that. So we all flew back, and it was a good show. It was a good show. It was different. It was very different going on. Like when we went Saturday afternoon, the show literally was just vendors. I mean, there was nobody there. And just, talking to like the few dealers that were there, we're bumping into people that we know that are like, oh my gosh, I literally can't get 4 steps without somebody jumping on me because nobody has anybody.
Yeah, that must have been terrible. Yeah.
So I told him, I said, hey, if you want, take because we get the allied badges, right? Because we're not technically vendors. I go, if you want to take my badge and put it on, when they see the yellow at the bottom versus the orange, they just won't even look at you. But yeah, it was interesting, but good. I couldn't, we can't complain.
Well, that's good. I felt bad for Adam because he was trying to launch his book there. Adam's got his new book, The Servant Leading F&I Manager, which I've got on the screen here for everybody. He had planned some book signings and stuff like that, and the crowds definitely weren't what they were before.
And his books didn't show. So
no, I didn't know that.
A couple cases of books. I think he was supposed to have, 150 books, something like that. And they got lost in transit. But just fortunately, Jonathan Dawson, who's one of our partners in the Pinnacle Training Center, he happened to have a box of 30 books that had just gotten to him early. So he said, I'll bring your books with me. So he had just enough to sign a few and hand some out. But again, all things kind of coming together, it was somewhat fortunate because, it wasn't like we didn't have a ton of people that we couldn't give them to, but yeah, at least we had a few that he could sign and give out and have for to show when he was on his CBT news interview. So yeah,
that weather was crazy though. I mean, I saw a thing where it was the first blizzard warning in the history of the Gulf states that was ever off, like in history.
When we were there, we were at the hotel when all this stuff started. The hotels wouldn't let employees go home. So they comped them all rooms, and for 2 days, the employees lived at the hotel and they just ate hotel food. Nobody was going everywhere. I mean, restaurants were closed. Walgreens everything was closed. It was crazy. It was like Armageddon. It was the most crazy thing ever.
Well, and they have, no way of dealing with that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the places that, don't handle it frequently, I can understand that, but they're just like, we don't have any of this stuff. There's not, plows, there's not salt spreaders. Like you're just there on something that's like, they are never going to be ready to expect that,
Right.
So that was a crazy situation from it.
Yeah, you're just
Question.
hoping nature takes care of it.
Yeah, question for you I had here is, obviously, like you said, you guys were there to do your thing. Was there anybody that you saw that presented that you thought was real neat, or any new technology or anything that you thought was pretty cool while you were there?
There is so much stuff coming out right now. There are a lot of everybody, it seems like at this point, is integrating some version of AI into their software. I mean, whether it be the folks at Cox Automotive, whether it be Dealer Track Route One, the CRMs. Everybody's trying to utilize that at some level. So there were a lot of different things with AI that were very interesting. And as you know, people that know us probably know we have a really robust AI platform that we're currently attaching to our online training that will help a lot. So yeah, it was really, that was kind of the theme of it. It was mostly that. The manufacturers were there with kind of some new stuff, but it really wasn't. There were very few just really conversations. I mean, we got to stop and look at, for those that are looking, Auto FI, we got to stop and talk to our buddy Joe St. John. He gave us a demo of some of their new stuff that's going on with their AI, and they have some really cool things just out of the box that do things that, I mean, basically can take a customer kind of from ding to dong. So got to see their thing. That was really cool. But yeah, that's kind of seemed like that was the theme this year, which rightfully so. It's going to be taking over this industry. I mean, at some level, we're going to be fighting with AI to figure out how to integrate it, but also how to keep a leash on it at some level, right? Because I think that a lot of people are going, we can do this and drastically reduce personnel.
Right.
And the other thing, we still have businesses to run. We still have families that depend on us, right? So we got to find a way to take AI to utilize and enhance what we're currently doing, but it doesn't need to be a replacement for people,
Right.
even if it can be, in my opinion.
Yeah, no,
Um,
and maybe it's going to be to a certain extent, but like I know a lot of people that their thoughts are this can like relieve them of a lot of personnel expense, and I don't think that's positive.
Yeah, and that's one of, I mean, that's, as dealers, this, personnel expense is typically your biggest, right? And
Hmm.
it's the thing that you're always trying to trim the most. But I think that AI will be able to grease the skids with the things that we do. I think that it will allow us to have some of these conversations that are tougher from the consumer viewpoint and soften the edges of those conversations a little bit. And it'll help us enhance what we currently do by just constantly listening. Because that's the one thing that sometimes we don't do well in this industry is we don't listen well. We don't listen to what the customer wants, and they tell us over and over and over, this is what I want. This is how I want to buy. This is the way I want to be treated. And we continue to do the same thing. So I think that the enhancement that we get with that, it'll be glaringly obvious where we go, okay, these are the things that we have to do. And like that, how it is. Once you get one person that fully adopts it, everybody else is going to have to do it because it's just like when menu first came around. I mean, I remember back as a finance person when we didn't have menus at all. It wasn't even a thing. We just sat down and step sold products, right? We didn't have a menu
Right.
when it first came out. I'm like, this is bizarre. And then, a couple people adapted it and you're like, okay, this really works. Same thing with Dealer Track and Route One. We looked at it and we're not just gonna fax over our apps and then call our buyer right away and talk through this deal, right? It's all going to be on the computer. It's going to be so impersonal. It's going to kill relationships. But we couldn't imagine doing it the old way anymore. So I think that once, that'll be something that once we start that, it's going to be a very, very fast evolution of what the business is. And I say that as an evolution, not a revolution, right? I think that it's going to enhance the things that we do and let us put more focus on the things we're not doing well, and just help dealerships in every aspect.
Absolutely. And that's the one thing is, make sure that you guys are vetting the platforms that you use. obviously, like you said, Paul, I mean, you see people adding the words AI to about everything these days.
Mhm.
And not all things are the same. So make
Right.
sure that when you're getting involved with any of these technology partners, you properly vet who you're dealing with and where your information's going, because that's going to be a lot of it, because a lot of these are things where they train on information.
Yeah.
So I want to be really, really careful with who's getting my data at a dealership level, right? And then what are they doing to safeguard that information, because we've got some really sensitive customer information in
Yeah.
our system. So, when you're going out there and you're doing it, make sure you're doing your due diligence, because yes, it can be good to get on the front end of something with a new and upcoming company, but you got to make sure that they're going to be doing the right thing by you. So it's just really important to do it. Make sure you do your due diligence and vet it. So that's what we've got for the NADA show. Like I said, Adam's new book is available on Amazon. I put a link in the comments, so if anybody wants to get that there, it is The Servant Leading F&I Manager. I'm sure we'll have Adam on here at some point to talk with us a little bit about that. So the next thing I wanted to talk about in today's session is know your strengths, okay, but embrace your weaknesses. All right, a lot of our stuff is topical when we go over these, right? Because it's things that we are seeing at a certain time that makes us think about what we want to talk about, right? And as you get older, Paul, you're old. Okay,
I'm very old.
I am getting there. I feel older every day. But as you get older, you reflect on things, right? And when I was younger, I definitely thought I knew everything. As I get older, I realize I knew less than I thought, right? Uh, Adam just posted in that he never gets invited to our show. Well, I'll post on him. Adam, we'll invite you for the next episode. You're invited. Okay. I asked you to make a little video, but you were busy earlier. You're doing like 1,000 things a day. So my apologies. Your attention span's not greatest for long periods of times like this either.
Yeah, we'll have to do like a 4-minute podcast.
Yeah,
So
with Adam, this is 45 minutes. We can get we could get 4 to 5. We could get 4 to 5 minutes as opposed to 45, and then we'll get have to get him out of here. So we'll have to get him in and out the next time. But what I was talking about is we were doing this. I was kind of reevaluating some stuff. We've been talking a lot, obviously, about our online academy. We're looking to add some things as far as what we have available to people and increase some of our offerings, right, Paul?
yeah.
And, I keep general notes of things that I want to do, some of them directly related to them, some of them kind of not. But one of the things I was doing is I've got kind of like a sales management doc that I always update, right? And what I want to do is I'm doing this is I'm kind of reevaluating things that I think that are right and things that are wrong, right? Me and you talk about this a lot. There's things that we take from each other and adjust to what we think is the best way, right? And, so I reached out to a couple of people. There's not many things in life that I think I do a really good job with. Sales management is one of them, right? Now, is that to say that I'm the best? No. Okay. But I do think I am very, very good at it, right? And what I wanted to know is I wanted to reach out to people and see about people that they think that do a better job than me at certain aspects of it, right? Because I've got a specific way I do things, and I understand that I'm probably not doing things that I could be to doing better, right? So I reached out to some people and I said, hey, who are some people that you think are really, really good sales managers, right? Or general managers that do sales management, because you have some of that. And that was kind of more of what I was, where it was very, very sales management leading general manager, right? And what I wanted to know is what are some things that are different that they do than what I do, right? What I wanted to look at is maybe some things that I could incorporate to mine. And, I asked one who's a protege of mine, Corey Oliveras, who I brought up from being my assistant manager to being a general manager for the group that I used to work for. And he spent a lot of time with me. So he knows the things I'm good at, and he knows the things I'm not so good at, right? And he goes to me, well, the thing that you were always really, really good at was maximizing people, right? Getting the best out of them. He goes, you take kind of a military approach to it. Okay. But what he told me that somebody else did good, and this made sense to me when he said it, is one of the other guys that we had worked with does a really good job of doing daily training, right? On just the basics. Okay. That is something I tended to skip. right? Because I always had that, like you said, it was when you work with me, it is kind of a military mindset. Know what you need to do and do it. Right.
Right.
Like I have very little ability to handle people not knowing how to do their job. Okay. But could I have done a better job of doing that daily? And he goes, you know, what I missed there is he was like, you're great once they know that knowledge. He goes, but sometimes I think you lose some people prior to that because he did such a good job. The other guy he was talking about, he's like, he did such a good job of just daily, just pounding into him, whether it be the sales process, how to do a right back with customers. And he's like, it's very, very structured with it. It's like, and while I have a very structured process, I do things that wasn't one of them, and I had to look at him and be like, yeah, you're right, Corey. I really didn't. And I never really had much time for people that didn't know how to do their job. And, especially if you've been doing it for a while. Right.
Yeah.
Like I understand when you're new, and yes, I'll spend a bunch of time with you when you're new. Okay. But once you've been doing it for a year or two, I just expect you to do it how things go. Like what's some things like that you've over the years found that maybe you don't do as well as you could have done, or that you found that you changed and you put into part of your process?
I think I mean, almost everything.
Right.
I've never looked back and been like, oh, well, man, I have these. I mean, I have some things that I'm really great at. I'm good at coaching. I'm good at digging into people and finding out what their, what's their hot buttons, what motivates them, what makes them want to not only come to work every day, but come to work and excel at their job. The thing that I wasn't good at, especially when I was a dealer, was time management. And part of it was my own fault because I allowed myself to get pulled in so many different directions. So I actually had some dealers that were in my 20 group, and I would just sit down and talk to them, and it's just asking for advice, right? It's being humble enough to ask somebody else, just say, hey, I struggle with this. What do you do? And I had one that really sat down and talked to me, and he said, I struggled with the same thing, but I had somebody at one point stop me and grab me and said, this is how you do it. And what we did is I sat down and I just made a list of everything that were my day-to-day responsibilities, and I scheduled them, right? So if I had to sit down with the CFO or the controller and go over the schedules and go over the statements, stuff like that, it was a scheduled thing, and it happened every day at the same time. We had the same amount of time allotted for it. And if it was from 9 to 9:45, at 9:45, I was shutting it down, even if we were in the middle of something. And then that would just move over to the next day's docket, just so that I could stay on task. And then you find in between those, you schedule yourself some time, maybe an hour here, 45 minutes there. That's just free time, that are just things that popped up during the day that you need to get done. But staying super regimented there, was very important. And then also the other thing that I had to teach myself how to be better at was understanding. I always had a pretty good sense of empathy, but I didn't truly, I didn't really understand empathy because I wasn't exactly sure where people were coming from. More to the point that I would try to put people on my agenda, right? Rather than find out what
Figuring
their
out where
agenda
they
is
are.
and help
Yep.
them accomplish their goal, which would then in turn help me accomplish mine. So that kind of servant leading mindset, that really kind of hit home for me when I got to be about at probably 40, where I just figured it out. And I'm like, man, if I really take my time and help people get what they want, I'll eventually get what I want. But not only that, they will be emotionally invested in helping me get what I want because I'm
Right.
helping them. And, and that's a big part of like Adam's book right now. And, this isn't to like pimp his books, but like that, his current book, Servant Leading F&I Manager, is exactly that. And it's
Right.
not just that, it talks about servant leadership and how it doesn't matter what position you are within the store, all of
No, it
the
doesn't.
things that he has apply. They apply whether you're a porter, whether you're a dealer principal, whether you're a controller, whether you work in the office. All of those things apply. He just happened to have a focus on F&I because that's what we focus on as a company.
Right.
But if you take those things and you dissect them, what you find is that there's so many little golden nuggets in there. And a lot of them are things that good leaders already know, but it's the same thing we all need, right? We all need coaching because we all know what we're supposed to do. We know what the recipe for success is. And sometimes we look back at the end of our day and we go, I did not do all the things that I
Right.
should have done to have the most successful day possible. Or I let time get away from me, or I let little things distract me from what I really needed to get done. And, it's just about that staying on task. It's about that being focused and having your day so regimented, just like you, right? I'm super regimented and structured that I go, okay, I have, and like today, our whole thing got thrown off because I was 10
'Cause
minutes late
you
getting
had
on
some
this
stuff going on.
because I got stuck on the phone with a dealer, right? So the car business is going to get in the way
Right.
constantly. But what you got to do is go, okay, I have to forfeit if I had something scheduled for 45 minutes and I was 15 minutes late into it, I can't push everything back. I
Right.
only now have 30 minutes to accomplish that. And then whatever I don't get done in that rolls over to the next day. So it's just about staying on track and staying on pace. And what you find is that if you have that good system and you can hold yourself accountable and you have processes, you'll get so much more done throughout your day. And that was the thing that I had to learn. When I was the managing partner of my store, was I can't allow myself to be distracted, because if I get distracted, I have 144 employees that are counting on me to do all of the right things that I need to do. And if I get distracted, I'm letting all of them down. So it was just, that really forced me to be very internal about that.
Totally. The one thing that as we go through here, like I said, as you get older, and I was making fun of you here, as you get older, you do reevaluate these things, right? And I have been doing a lot of contemplation about it. And one of the things that's most important, and you definitely don't get this until you get older, and you kind of get it in different sets, right? You get a little bit here and there, is understanding yourself, right? It's really important that you understand both your strengths and your weaknesses, right?
Mm.
And as you're younger, you just kind of lean into the strengths. And I was always that guy too. You lean into the strengths, and maybe you push the weaknesses aside. But if you really want to become a well-rounded person and do the best for both you and your employees, because we always come at this from a management perspective, obviously, is that you look at those weaknesses and you embrace them. Okay. And that's how we're going to actually end this. I'm going to give you one of my best car stories. Okay. I have it right here. That's how we'll end today's episode. Okay. I was blessed to be in management very early in my career. I was generally among the youngest people at each of the positions I had, right? And I was able to get an F&I manager's position at 21 years old. And it's a very small dealership, right? It was at Peter Koch Chrysler Dodge Jeep in Seneca Falls. And I was 21 and I got thrown into the box not knowing anything, right? That's the way you get
Mm.
any management position generally in the
Yeah.
car business is
Here's your
here it
computer,
is.
kid. Figure it
Yep.
out.
Yep. Don't mess it up. Luckily I had backup. I have my father, obviously, who is a trainer in the business and owned his own F&I company for years. So I wasn't going into it with no help. I definitely had a leg up on most people, right?
Right.
But I'm still going in there as a 21-year-old person that thought I was much better than I was, right? And going into it. And I learned a lot of good lessons from that. It was a very old school dealership. Was maybe a bit more aggressive than what today's people could handle from a
Mhm.
dealing with people perspective. And maybe I tend to kind of manage that way a little bit, and I've needed to soften up over time. But it's definitely given me some good lessons and some resiliency. But one of the things that was good as I got through it, and I went from being a finance manager there to being the sales manager at that store in a short period of time, right? And I had salespeople that were substantially older than me. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
talking like at that point I was 21. I mean, some of these guys were in their 60s,
Right.
right? You know, and I came through, and to me everything was about dollars, right? You talked about trying to find out what's important to other people, right?
Right.
So when I took over, they started selling more cars and making more money, right? So to me, I'm doing a great job, right, Paul?
Yeah.
Like I mean, in
On
my
paper.
mind, like I mean, that's the only thing I understand at this point is more money is good, right?
Right.
Just more sales, more money, good, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that was a big benefit, and I'd actually come back to find this guy later in life, which is kind of funny. The dealer there, like I said, was Peter Koch, and he had a consultant, right? That would come in, and it was a different kind of consultant. It was kind of more of a psychological thing, right? He was doing things that a lot of people do now, prior to when normal people were doing them, right? They did
Mhm.
like the disc assessment for personality at types, and this was in the early 2000s,
Right.
so way before your average person was doing it, right? And that's how we did a lot of the hiring, but he would also do it for improvement purposes, right? And he actually did something for me that I do a lot today, and it'll make sense with what we're talking about today, right? So the guy's name is Jim Dance. He's actually one of the trainers. If anybody goes to the NADA Dealer Academy, which I went to, the NADA Dealer Academy has him come in and do some of this when we talk about it. But what happened is I had probably been in the position for about 6 months. Okay. And I did not get a heads up that this guy was coming in, because that's not how you did things back in the good old days. You got surprised with stuff.
Right.
Right. And that's just kind of how I like the guy who's no issues. So it wasn't like a bad thing, but he came in and he sits down with me and he goes, Bobby, he goes, how are things? He goes, I hear you're selling more cars, you're making more money. Everything's good, right? I go, yeah, great. I'm sitting there, I'm like pumping my chest, yeah, we're doing awesome. Right.
Right.
And he goes, how are your people handling the change with having you in charge and, doing all that stuff? And I really hadn't thought about it a whole lot, so I had to sit there and think about it because was very self-centered at that point in time. I was like, well, I'd imagine they're doing good, right? I'd imagine that they're having a good time. They're all selling more cars, making more money. And he goes, well, what if I told you they're not? And I go, well, I'd be surprised, and what I did not know is he was prepared to actually show me what they thought about me, which was a very unfiltered assessment of me.
Right.
And they obviously didn't give me the names of the people, but gave it written down. And there's a lot of things that you'd expect. Cocky thinks he's better than he is. I should have had the position. All of these type
Right.
of things, right? And you're looking at them, and I've done this later in life to other people, and they haven't handled it in the right way. They wanted to argue about it, and I had to sit there and think about it for a few minutes. I'm not going to tell you I was super gracious at first. At first you're a little bit upset by it, right? That hurts your feelings,
Yeah.
right? But as I sat there and looked at it, I'm like, you know what? They're probably not wrong, right? like the things that their assessments of me was that, I'm a little overbearing, I'm a little bit too cocky, they were accurate things for the point in time. And he gave me a book. Okay. And I'm also going to put this in the comments because I literally will listen to this book about 3 times a year because it really grounds me. Okay. And the book is called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Right. And what he was saying to me is he goes, this book is just perfect for you. And he was 100%. He's like, the skills that you use to get to this position were all about you. Right. I got into being a finance manager by being a bulldog, by being pushed forward. It was all about me to that point. I'm a salesperson. It's about me. I'm a finance manager. It's about me. Right. And this was old school F&I. Nobody got paid anything on this. So, I mean, it was literally me. He goes,
Right.
your role has changed. He goes, yes, it's still important that you're successful. And if the way you're successful is the store is successful. Right. And that's what really shaped the rest of my career. So I don't know that I've ever even told the guy he had that type of an impact on me. And I don't think that I did even when I was in the NADA Academy. And I'm going to tag him in this. So hopefully he sees it. But it really did. It shaped the way that I managed from that point forward. And this kind of goes in with what you were saying is that I looked at things from a much different perspective, right?
Yeah.
Is in order for me to be successful, I could still be worried about what I need, but what I realized is what I need is to take care of my people. And like you said it, if you know what's important to them and you take care of them, you're going to get there. So that was an awesome, awesome life lesson learned. Okay. Adam, like you said, goes over it in his book. I'm also going to list this in there. If you have not and you are in a management position, obviously, I think that everybody should read this book. I've also shared this with a lot of people that work for me, right? This is a great tool to give to somebody as they're progressing through your organization if you think they have management potential, right? I think that this is a good thing to pass on to somebody, because this is a real lesson that they can learn and they can really do something with it.
Yeah, and we just speaking of strengths and weaknesses, Most of us don't know, right? I mean, we kind of know what we're good at, but we don't really know the things that we're not good at until somebody goes, "Hey, you're not that good at that," right? You think that you are, but you're not that good at that. And one of the things that really opened my eyes to that, if you want to know what your strengths and weaknesses are and how you are as a manager, whether you're a manager, whether you're, finance manager, desk manager, GM, GSM, dealer, principal, typically we get told what our strengths and weaknesses are from our superiors, right? The person that's the
Right.
next level up that gives us reviews and gives us feedback. You want to really know what your strengths and weaknesses are, sit down individually with each one of your employees that you're directly responsible for and just have a candid conversation with them. Just to say, hey, I'm trying to be a better version of myself this year. Let me ask you a question. What are the things that you feel that I do really well that help you be successful? And then what are the things that you feel that I don't do well? What are you things that you feel I can improve upon? And it's okay to have an honest conversation. And one of the things that we did, I fell into this kind of by accident when I first started running my store. I had a gentleman, dear friend of mine, his name's Sean Kelly, and he had a company where they would basically come, it's called Car Motivators, and they would basically come in and he would sit down. He would come in for 2 days a month and he would sit down with every single one of my employees for about 30 to 40 minutes, every single one, and ask them, how do you feel about your job? Do you have job satisfaction? Do you feel like your boss cares about you? Do you feel like the company cares about you? Do you feel like you make a difference? What could you, and because he was a third party, they would really open up to him. And then he would take these robust and detailed notes and come back and give me all of that stuff. And there were some things that absolutely shocked me coming from certain people
Right.
that I thought were the happiest that they could be. And they really weren't that happy. They were just putting on a show. And once I started talking, he started giving me that feedback, and I was able to take actionable steps based off that. The culture in our store, we already had a great culture because we had a lot of fun and we were selling cars and making money, but our culture went through the roof. So if you're anywhere from a dealer principal, GM, GSM, you're watching this finance director, talk to the people that report to you and get their feedback. And if you can get honest feedback, what you'll find is that there's some of the things that you maybe think that you're great at, maybe you're not so great at.
Right.
Right. And the things that, because what we tend to do is the things that we're not good at, and then we organically know we're not good at, we tend to ignore those or push them off on other people. And what we find is that causes some frustration between, with our employees, because they're going, well, you hold me to these standards, but you're not holding yourself to these standards. So, if you want to know really how you're doing, ask the people that report to you, ask the people that have to carry out the marching orders that you give, and see what their level of happiness is. And you might find it shocking. It'll at least be interesting.
Right. It's for sure. And one thing is you got the point is asking the people below you. It really is. The people above you are generally focused on outcomes, right?
Right.
What you'll get there is managing tips, then how you handle your people. That'll be very, very different. One thing is it can be uncomfortable for people to do this, right? And it's
Sure.
not, 360-degree feedback is what that was called, right? And what a lot of times is an easy way to do it is kind of the way that Jim did it to me. All right. Do it like it's a suggestion box is the other thing that you can
Yeah.
do. And this is what I did for one of my managers, right? And the guy was a good manager, but he was kind of a prick. Not going to be he was a good manager, good numbers. The people liked the outcomes they got, but the guy was just kind of a jerk to deal with, right? And I said, do me a favor. I go, what I want you to do, because this basically was what got done to me, is get everybody to write down, okay, what they think about you, just honestly, right? Good and bad. Okay. Ask them to not put their name on it. Okay. And put it in a box. Okay. What I want you to do is review it. All right. After you review it, let's talk about it. Right. So we talked about it. Right. And at first he was a little bit pushbacky. The reason I do this, I go, it's not about excuses. Okay.
Right.
If what you're doing, you can probably get the same result by just doing things a little different. That's what they're
Mhm.
trying to tell you is they like the result, right? They're doing a good job. They're selling a lot of cars. They're making a bunch of money. This was the same thing that happened to me. And I'm trying really not hard not to throw the name in here because I'm thinking of the
Right.
actual conversation as I'm saying it. But, the things that they're saying are accurate, right? And what you got to do is just look at it and how you do it. Right now, the next part, and I forgot to talk about this early, is probably the most important portion of it. And this is something that, as you know, as like I said, as a younger person, I've changed the way I do things as I go forward. And if I was ever back in that side again, I would change again from how I did it then. Right. One of the things that's difficult with in a dealership or in any business is to get people to realize that you want to make change, right?
Yeah.
Because number one, if you're slowly making change, they're probably not going to notice it. Okay. So one of the things that this book and Jim talked with me about is you got to really apologize to them for the things that you do wrong. And, at first I was a person when I was younger that couldn't apologize for anything. Now I'm a person who will apologize for anything I do wrong, right?
Mhm.
Because I understand the power of it, right? When you apologize to somebody and you follow through, because it's a two-step process, right? You can apologize and then not do it, and it'll
Right.
have a reverse effect, right? But what I said to him is, if you apologize and you mean it, right? You don't just say you're sorry because you're sorry. We've all seen those ones, right? You say,
Yeah.
"No, I understand what your concerns are. I think they're valid, right? And I am going to work my best to make sure that it happens." And you don't get a but. Don't throw but in there. I
Mhm.
need to know this is about you, right? And what they'll do is they'll be very receptive to you, right? And I can tell you from my experience, if I can leave anybody with this, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, and I'll let you close out the show, Paul, is if you do this 360-degree feedback, you get their information, you look at it, you acknowledge your weaknesses. If you want to make a huge change in your store, in your performance, in your store's performance, if you acknowledge this, okay, if you go and you apologize to the people, to the things that you are not good at, right, meaningfully, and then you follow through with it, you will see a world of change you've never seen before. So that's
Yep.
what I've got for today. I'll let you sign us off here, Paul.
Yeah, I think just signing this off, the things that I would say to the folks that are listening to this, um, really the most important things you can do is listen well to those around you. The 360 degrees, like you said, whether there's people that you report to or people that report to you, and be curious and question everything. I mean, question everything, even the things that work well. Sit down and look at everything that you do and question it and go, why do we do it this way? And is it the most effective way? Because what you'll find is that there'll be little tweaks that you can do, and that's just growth, right? And like you said, what employees want more than anything is they want somebody that listens to them, then takes that feedback and invests in them and causes growth. And whether that, growth sometimes is uncomfortable. Sometimes it's uncomfortable to grow because you have to be pushed out of your comfort zone to grow. And that's okay if it's done in the right way. But those are the things that we should be looking at in every single thing that we do, just to find out what you may question something and really dive down into it, and then find out that we're actually doing the right thing. It's kind of like, was something really hit me, and I'll sign off with this. So if you ever seen the movie World War Z with
Mhm.
Brad Pitt, so I love when he went to Israel and they closed their borders off early, and they said, how did you know? And he said, well, we have this thing called the 13th man. We have 12 people that are experts on just about everything in our country, right? Super intellectuals. And if they all agree on one thing, they all say, this is what's happening, this is the course of action. It is the job of the 13th man to assume that they're wrong and question everything. And if it's just obvious that this is the right thing, the 13th man, his job is to go, you guys are all wrong, and I'm going to show you why. And when we do things like that, when we look at things under a fine tooth comb, what we find is that we might find that it's the exact right thing to do, but we actually look at everything and we're actually curious about what's going on and why are we successful. And then that process becomes very duplicatable. So listen to everybody around you, take the feedback, put it into action, and be curious about, what we can do to improve on a daily basis. And that will get us to the next level.
Absolutely. Great way to end it here. So hopefully everybody enjoyed this week's episode. Remember, these will be live when we do them on all the different platforms. We will be launching them on Fridays on all of our podcast platforms, whether that be YouTube, Facebook, or not you, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Hopefully we get better as we do these, like everything. We review what we do, and hopefully we try and get better and you guys enjoy this. But more importantly, hope everybody sells a bunch of cars this week. And You have a great week. Talk to you guys
let's
later.
close it strong.